Thank you very much, and we're very happy to be welcomed here by you today. I'm Monica Dorsey, and I'm from El Mirage, and my parish is the Santa Teresita Catholic Parish in El Mirage.
Good morning, my name is Dave Ryan. I live up in North Phoenix and attend the Paradise Valley United Methodist Church. I'm listening.
So I'll just share just a couple moments about who I am as far as the work of organizing goes, and Dave will do as well. I started organizing with Valley Interfaith Project in 2003. Now, that's when I moved here. I started organizing in 2005. It's all getting away from me. But I learned a lot in that first couple of years about my community, my church and the community there, and how to strengthen our community from the inside through this work, and how to find and build leadership within the community. And so it's been a very, very interesting time this last 10, 11 years, and it's been very rewarding in the sense that we've accomplished some really wonderful things, and it's been a tremendous spiritual experience for me. Also, I've grown, and I have marvelous companions that we do this work with, and so I'm here to share something about our ideas on why community is so important, and Dave will also share with you some of the practical aspects of how we do that.
Yeah, so just a little bit about myself. So my wife and I, we've been here in the Valley since '99. And prior to that, we lived in 5 other states over 20 plus years. And in every community that I was in, we wanted to be part of the community. We sought ways that we could give back. And one of the ways that I was able to do that was through literacy programs. I would work with one-on-one with individuals or in small groups. After arriving here in Phoenix, helped arrange work with English as a second language programs for individuals in small groups. But it was always addressing needs that the community had and individuals had. And it wasn't until somebody from Valley Interfaith Project, who attended my church, told me about Valley Interfaith Project, which really addressed the causes in society that create the needs of why we have missions. And so both are needed, but we often tend to focus on the mission side. And so it's just been in this last 8 years that I've been working on trying to address problems at their source. And how can we change them both in community behavior as well as policy at city and state levels.
So why is building community so important? Obviously, you all have done some thinking about that because you actually decided that this was the topic you wanted for your theme today. Kudos to you, because that's not something that is necessarily always going on in our institutions these days. But it is the task of our institutions to foster community for the sake of human development, for securing basic human rights granted in our founding documents, but also extending to things such as decent housing and education, freedom of migration, all of those kinds of things that are very much in front of us every day as we read the news and listen to the radio and stuff. Human development includes enabling a person to mature as a citizen with strong values and convictions that promote critical thinking and purposeful action on their own behalf as well as that of the greater community. If our churches and schools do not do this work, do not provide this trusted space for people to grow, for community to be built, it doesn't get done. And our society is much the weaker for it. faith communities, churches, have a unique role in this process. You are a valuable, trusted space that is very difficult, if not impossible, to find anywhere else in our society. And this is valuable beyond measure both to your congregation and to the greater community that you're part of here. This is a place where people first enter public life. This is where children learn how to be part of a bigger community, where we learn to have the ability to speak safely about what's on our minds. This is a place for us to have a critique of our common life and our culture. It's safe to say what's on our minds here. And it's important that we have a critique of our common culture because it's not always so great out there. There are things that we as citizens are obligated to speak up about, and this is a safe place to do that. And that's so important. This is a place to foster mutual support and responsibility to each other. You know, that's been going on here all morning. It's lovely to see. But that's found very few other places in our society. And this is a place where people can develop a sense of common identity, values, traditions, loyalty. Where do we learn loyalty? Outside of our families and then in our churches and congregations. So what goes on here is vitally, vitally important. And the continuity that you have within a church or congregation structure and institutional structure is so important. And so this is important work, and it's important that you're thinking about doing it. But it is hard to do in our society today. It's hard to maintain and build these communities because there's a lot of pressure coming in from the larger society. Everything's kind of seems to be working against it. The streak of rugged individualism and the shallowness but the ease of social media and the desire for instant gratification that's just everywhere, conscious and subconscious. These are just some of the things that are pressures on institutions and families out there. And they all work against trying to build community. Our churches, whether they're mainline churches like ours or other types of faith communities, everyone is struggling with this concept of community, how to do it and how to maintain it. It's difficult. But creating deep and sustaining community requires a conscious, ongoing effort. It's something that's important to think about. It's something important to take action around. It's not just about being able or willing to talk to each other, to be friendly, to be neighborly. It's more than that. It requires a different kind of a conversation, an intentional dialogue about concerns that really matter in the lives of the community members. It requires relationship, but on a deeper level. And so the question then is, okay, so how do we do this? I'm going to give that to Dave at this point.
So what keeps you up at night? Right? Simple question. But it's a question that we try to ask each other in our meetings on a regular basis. And often those very simple questions can lead to some profound discussion. And in my own congregation, it's something that we do once a year as a congregation. We ask everybody in attendance to turn to their neighbor or to sit, more likely, or hopefully, sit next to somebody you don't know and ask what keeps you up at night. Oftentimes it's health or family relationships, children, certainly a big topic. But in our broader society, it has other things going on, right? So there's the public safety in our community, the education system, public, private, or charter systems that are in our area, are they sufficient for our children? Prison sentencing. Many tens of thousands of families across the state are impacted by our prison sentencing processes and incarceration procedures. And people get, when they're asked that question of what keeps you up at night, different things will come out in that discussion. So I'll give an example, and then give an example of how those smaller discussions can turn into bigger things that happen in our community that actually create change, that create improvement. And then also some things that, as a Valley Interfaith team, some of the things that we're working on across the Valley, 40-member institutions working together. Because to create change in society, it does take people, thoughtful people working together, bringing ideas forward, openly discussing it, and gaining support for that change. Just on a small level, I work as an IT consultant, so I'm really kind of an engineer, techie guy kind of guy. But I small business and co-locate with about 8 other small businesses. And one of those small businesses is an attorney, and he dresses very nice. His furniture in his office is beautiful. Everything he does is impeccable. But our conversation is very, very brief. Hey, how you doing? Great to see you. Blah, blah, blah. So I knew he went on vacation a few weeks ago, and so I stopped in his office on the way out just earlier this week. And I said, hey, how was your vacation? And that opened up a discussion, not only about his vacation, but I said it must be kind of nice to get back to your house where you can kind of settle back into your daily living. And he says, you don't understand how busy my house is. And he told me the reasons why. But he very briefly mentioned the disabled brother-in-law. And so this is where that question of how do we create community, how do we create a deeper relationship comes in. Because I said, I might ask, I've never heard you mention the disabled brother-in-law. What did you mean? And he went into a very painful story of a brother-in-law who 13 years ago had suffered a number of debilitating strokes, had nowhere to turn. His wife welcomed the brother-in-law into the house. And the doctors said it was probably going to be within a year that he would pass just because of the number and severity of strokes that he had. 13 years later, the brother-in-law is still in the house, and he's well past retirement age. And his vision of him and his wife having golden years together is now spent with caregiving at home. And with thousands and thousands of families across our state that face similar situations is really dramatic. And that's something that over the last, as an example of how small conversations like that in our congregations and other institutions reveal the extent of what's going on in our community relative to that, and how many of our caregivers are just wearing out just from the 24/7 care of loved ones. And that led to Valley Interfaith Project making our legislators aware of this and creating a respite care program. So if you hear a respite care program, that came from Valley Interfaith Project working with our legislature so that even on a small part-time basis, somebody could come into the home and give a little relief to the caregiver. Another example of how small one-on-one conversations would keep you up at night. Some of our poorer neighborhoods down in the southern part of Phoenix. Again, what keeps you up at night? Well, especially during the recession, we had the city of Phoenix withdrew a number of the after-school programs. Well, in a poorer neighborhood where both parents are working and children come home early after school, it makes the community more vulnerable to people that might prey on children or might or might bring, illegal activity into the community. Without a presence of in this case, a city worker or patrol by city police, it made that community more vulnerable. Part of our mission as Valley Interfaith Project is how do we teach people in our communities to have a voice for the voiceless. And so working with leaders in those communities, we went down to City Hall in Phoenix, and they spoke of what's happening in their community. They got the police chief of Phoenix to walk their neighborhoods. And their conversation got the city manager to reinstate funding for after-school programs for their communities. Right? But it was people working together and sharing stories. And that's what we do. That's what we do. We do that with education, K-12 education, community college education. We do that with healthcare. So when it comes to things like people having access to healthcare, critically important for a healthy community. Valley Interfaith Project is a major influencer behind the scenes on that. One of our latest initiatives has to do with prison sentencing. And the number of cases that have come forward where families are ripped apart for nonviolent, didn't hurt anybody else kind of crimes, and yet we incarcerate people for long periods of time. We don't treat behavior or mental health. We treat it as a crime rather than a medical health issue. We treat addiction as a crime rather than as a medical health issue. Our mandatory sentencing laws are some of the toughest in the country. And at the same time, we have some of the highest usage of private prisons with mandatory occupancy rates that create big donations back to the legislators to keep the sentencing tougher. So we have some significant things from a social justice perspective that Valley Interfaith Project is working on. But all of those started with simple conversations or one-on-one and what keeps you up at night.
And just to add to that in these processes that Dave is talking about of addressing concerns that have come up in our institutions in these conversations, there's also been a process of strengthening that institution. Those conversations help to identify leadership, they help to strengthen relationship within that congregation, it helps to build the institution from the inside out. And that's part of why we think of our work not only as helping build community within the greater, Maricopa County community, but also building community within within the churches and schools and other institutions that are part of our network. And so we encourage these, we call them one-to-one conversations like Dave just described. We encourage those intentional, deeper conversations, respectful. They're meant to develop understanding between the two people having the conversation. They're meant to build a bond that goes forward. Because once you've had a conversation with somebody like that, you've got something that stays there. It changes that dynamic, that relationship. And then we build further beyond the one-on-one relationship to small group discussions where that dialogue then is brought forward in a different setting, but it's to ask people again to have a conversation about something that's deeper, something that's not just the everyday kinds of conversations that we have. It's an intentional effort to find out what's really happening with people. And again, it's about building cohesiveness, relationship. But it's also about identifying what are the concerns of this community? What is it? Not what are our issues? What are we concerned about as far as the bigger issues, our political leanings or issues that we're concerned there? No, it's about what's real personal here, what's affecting